haere mai, and welcome to Cult Chat, the podcast where we talk about coercion, control, and all things cultish. I'm Dr Caroline Ansley. I'm a medical doctor. As a child, I lived at the Centrepoint community, a notorious cult in New Zealand, and now I run a website that advocates for the former children of the community.
I'm Liz Gregory, and I run the Glory of Our Leavers Support Trust, and I'm privileged to walk alongside people after leaving this group as they embark on their new lives.
And I'm Lindy Jacob. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren, and I'm part of the Olive Leaf Network, a new initiative in Aotearoa to support leavers of high-demand religious groups. Come with us as we unpack the cult playbook. We'll be talking to experts and leavers of coercively controlling groups, and we will call for Kiwis to cult-proof their lives.
Come with us as we traverse the cultiverse.
A warning, this podcast contains references to subjects and discussions which may be difficult for some people to hear. Please take care of yourselves and your whānau when listening.
Hi, Kaz here with my friend Anka Richter, who's the author of the fantastic book, Cult Trip. She's bringing us an exciting event this year.
Thanks, Kaz. Australasia, get ready for Decult 2024, the first cult awareness conference in New Zealand, happening in Christchurch this October. Are you worried about a friend or family member who's in a group that may be causing them harm, or do you have your own story? Then join us for a weekend with experts from around the world, where those who've left cultic groups can share their experiences and meet professionals who can help them. Head to our website, decult.net, for all the info.
Come cult-proof your life at Decult 2024. I'll be there.
Good evening, good morning for you. Dr Gillie, a very warm welcome to you all the way from New Zealand. It's great to see you today.
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Lindy.
So to our listeners, we have got the wonderful privilege today of interviewing Dr Gillie Jenkinson from Hope Valley Counselling, and she's zooming in today all the way from the UK, so it's morning for her. I hear she's had a cup of tea and some porridge, and for me here it's in the evening. It's dark and cold and winter here in New Zealand, but I've also had a cup of tea and I'm excited for this interview. How are you going, Gillie?
I'm great, thank you. It's a sunny day, sunny, cloudy day, and we're in our summer here. Summer in inverted commas, I have to say. And I'm sitting at my desk with my dear little doggy curled up at my feet, snoring away. So yeah, I'm really been looking forward to meeting with you, Lindy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I've got a little dog curled up here too as well. I'm really hoping that she's not going to bark or do something crazy. But yeah, I'm also having a wee giggle because I've actually just tucked up my kids in bed, and at the moment we're working our way through reading The Big Friendly Giant by Roald Dahl, which is of course a very British book. We've been hearing Sophie having discussions with the Queen, and I was quite amused because they were just discussing about how eating human beings, for the giants who eat human beings from Wellington, they taste like gumboots. And they were talking about Wellington here in New Zealand as well. So that was kind of cool to see my home city being named by Roald Dahl there. But yeah, just hearing your British accent makes me think of Roald Dahl and books like the BFG.
Lovely. I love it.
Yeah, so
Don't look like someone who tastes like gumboots, but there you go.
I don't look like someone who tastes like gumboots. Oh yeah, I think I would be pretty tough and grimy, I must say.
Yeah.
To our listeners who may not yet be acquainted with Dr Gillie, she is, to give a quick bio, she's a qualified psychotherapist and a counsellor with more than 25 years experience. And she specialises in working with survivors of trauma, thought reform, which is sometimes called brainwashing, and undue influence, sometimes also connected with coercive control. And this includes the areas of rape, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, and people who are former members of cults, including first generation, second generation, and multi-generation. So Gillie, you've got really diverse experience, and you've worked for others, and you, as well as running your own private practice, the Hope Valley Counselling. So it's very exciting to have you here today to ask you a bunch of input for you to share around some of your experiences. But most of all, I'm really excited to have a chat with you about your visit to New Zealand, which is planned for later on this year.
That's very exciting.
So you've booked your flights. Have you begun to think about, booking Albie, your dog, into dog daycare?
Oh yeah. So Albie's booked in with Vicky, who's has him at her home, and he's very clingy. I've had to do a lot of healing on Albie because he was abandoned. His own had suddenly died. So I only got him a year ago, but he's 8, nearly 8. Yeah.
Albie's got attachment issues. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Right. That's exactly right.
But he wasn't part of a cult.
He wasn't part of a cult. But no, but he still needed some healing from other things. So yeah, Vicky will have him. I'm away for 2 months. So yeah. And yeah, my flights are booked, and I'm going to see family and friends. And my sister lives in Hanmer Springs in New Zealand, so I'm going to come and see her. And I'm going to do work for Olive Leaf Network and speak at the Decult conference. So it's a dream come true for me. It's fabulous.
That's amazing. It sounds like a fantastic combination between work and pleasure that you've got planned. And yeah, I do hope that it doesn't give Albie too many triggers to be abandoned for 2 months by you.
It won't, because he loves going to her house, and she has a little Brian who he loves.
Brian and Albie, that's gorgeous.
Brian and Albie, yeah. And he's really happy there, actually. No, I wouldn't put him anywhere he would feel unhappy. No, I'm very appreciative of him.
Good on you. You've got a soft heart. That's fantastic.
Yeah, really have, yeah.
Okay, well, a couple of other things that are springing to my mind, just to fill in the listener a little bit more about you and why we're interviewing you today. So you set up Hope Valley Counselling in about 2006 after getting your master's in Gestalt psychotherapy. And it was around this time going forward that you have developed your own specialized model for treating former cult members and survivors of spiritual abuse. And this is the model that was known as post-cult counselling, but you now call it the Walking Free model. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And actually it's longer than that, really, that it was evolving. Right. Because I went as an intern to America twice, to Wellspring Retreat and Resource Centre. So that's kind of where I learned the base of everything I went on to study and research and everything. And then my own cult experience. So everything comes together in the model and then the book, which we'll talk about.
I see. Yeah. So Wellspring, is that specifically for people who've experienced coercive control or cult-like environments?
The Wellspring Retreat and Resource Centre is now closed. But Dr. Paul Martin founded it and ran it as a psychologist for 25 to 30 years. And they were a specialist service. It was the only residential retreat centre for former cult members and survivors of coercive control and spiritual abuse in the world.
Wow.
And nothing's replaced it, actually.
Wow.
But there is a movement in the US to try and see something set up, and I believe there's things in some other countries now, but back when I went as an intern in 1999 and then 2008, there was nothing, and I spent a month there in 99 and 2 weeks there in 2008 working with clients. Wow. Under Dr. Martin's supervision. So I've got a lot of, it was the nearest thing I could get to training, that and the International Cultic Studies Association conferences, because there's been nothing. And Wellspring had such a depth of understanding of what former cult members needed.
Wow, that sounds truly incredible. You've had some, remarkable training opportunities there. And that's really fascinating to hear about how there is a lack of specialized training for therapists who are wanting to grow in their understanding and their skills in this area of supporting former members. So we'll come back more to that later, because you're right. Your Walking Free model is directly standing in that gap, isn't it? And one of the only most comprehensive resources available to stand in that gap. So we'll circle back more to that later. But so a little bit more about you. You were awarded your PhD in 2016, and that was freeing the authentic self and looking at the phases of recovery and growth from an abusive cult experience. So some more fascinating and powerful research there that you added as you pulled together the threads of your your knowledge and your understanding. And then very exciting, you pulled it all together into a wonderful comprehensive book, which is called Walking Free from the Trauma of Coercive, Cultic and Spiritual Abuse, a workbook for recovery and growth. And this book, comprehensive workbook, was published by Routledge only last year. So congratulations on that book hitting the shelves. And I've had many people testify that it is an incredibly helpful book.
That's amazing. Great.
Yes.
It touches me so much when I hear that it's helped somebody, because, that's why I wrote it. That's the reason I wrote it.
Great. And we'll come back to hear a bit more about the book soon. But so, I mean, I think another thread that is very, very helpful for your work, Gillie, is that you do have lived experience yourself, that you did have personal experience as a former member of an abusive cult-like group in the UK, and also experience in a spiritually abusive church. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I was in a Bible-based cult in the UK, which was a live-in community, and it was highly, highly abusive, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and it was a full-blown cult. Using any definition of a cult and brainwashing or thought reform theory, it was full-blown cult. Wow. And I was entrapped there for 7 years.
Wow.
And then it's a long story. I've told my story, well, some of my story in Walking Free, the book, in part 2, just so people who read the book actually know who they're interacting with and what my story is about.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you went through those things, and yet it does seem like you have definitely, what's that saying about when life throws you lemons, make lemonade? It sounds like you have turned that stuff into something really good, that you have turned those awful experiences that you've allowed them to shape you so that you can turn around and help others, so that they don't have to go through I guess what you went through, or that the recovery journey for them is easier. I imagine when you were working through your recovery, there was probably not the resources available that there is today, like the Walking Free model, to help you.
No, there was nothing. I mean, there was Janja Lalich's book, which is now called Take Back Your Life, but was previously called Captive Hearts, Captive Minds. That was around, and that was super helpful. And so is Take Back Your Life. But and gradually over the years, people have started publishing. Alexandra Stein published her book, Terror, Love and Brainwashing, which is super helpful. Daniel Shaw's published his books on traumatic narcissism, which refers to cults. And there's others who've written. But Walking Free, there was nothing like Walking Free because it's an actual model, it's an actual journey, and there's an actual roadmap in it, you know, to sort of say, well, you could try this, you don't have to do it in this order or whatever, but if you try, you can try it and see if it helps you. So yeah, there was nothing when I left, and that was my motivation for starting training, actually.
I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And now, you know, now you're in the position of being able to, and you have for a number of years now been able to present around the world and at conferences like ICSA to share research, to share your model, and you also continue to provide therapy and to provide supervision for other therapists and that type of thing, right? So.
Yeah, I've trained other therapists on a certificate in post-cult counselling, which is now going to be the certificate in the Walking Free model. And on my website, I have 10 affiliates who, one is in America and the rest are in the UK. And then there's one wonderful Ruth Jarman who's in Australia, who will be coming over to New Zealand as well. So she did it. So, you know, there are a number of people. Look, I'm at an age in my life where I want to pass things on. I have to. Nobody lives forever, and either I just hold it to myself and I think, oh, I did this and it's mine, or I think actually pass it on to other people. They'll build and develop. That's how research works. You know, you do your research, others then do research and they build on it. So that's been that's been kind of my motivation and what I've been doing maybe for the last, well, since the PhD, really, you know.
Yeah.
I put in the work 4 years full time on the PhD, and 125 pages of, it's a book in itself, the doctoral research, and then sort of developing that into the self-help workbook, which is Walking Free. Yeah,
that's amazing. And that's just super powerful that you're able, that you are now in a position where you can train others in this model, and you can, you know, because the ripples are going to keep going out, and because as we know, there are thousands and thousands of people around the world who are struggling with recovering from cultic type groups or spiritual abuse. And so I have no doubt that, you know, I hope that you'll be able to have an affiliate here in New Zealand, and or more than one, and in Australia, and, you know, down under, because heck, we sure do need it. So yeah, it's super exciting that that, you know, you have come onto the landscape with this model, and that many people are able to benefit from it. Yeah.
Thank you. One thing I want to say is that, you know, I'm coming through to New Zealand from Australia, but my mother was 4th generation Australian. So, and my sister lives in New Zealand. So, you know, I don't have family links to New Zealand, but I have Australian blood in me. And my great grandfather came to Australia back in 18 something, and he wasn't a convict, but apparently everybody says that.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, that's lovely that you do have some, you do have some family connections with Australia and with New Zealand, and you're very lucky that your sister lives in the beautiful Hanmer Springs, because what an amazing location. Yeah, that will be really, really special. Yeah, let's chat a wee bit more about what you're doing in Australia and what you're doing in New Zealand.
Yes, so I'm going to go into Perth and stay with my cousin.
Yeah.
And there's a therapist there, Sally Ann Richards, who's just seeing if there's any expressions of interest to do a day's training for therapists there, because they have very little, she tells me. So if there are any, you know, therapists in Perth, or, you know, of contacts, and, you know, who listen to your podcast, then there's a flyer coming out. Yeah, it'll go up on the events page on my website in the next day or two. And then I'm going to Brisbane, and I'm going to do 2 days on the 5th and 6th of October for KIFs, cult information family support.
Yes, wonderful. Oh,
And
that
for Tora Clavier, we've been in touch a lot, and it's great. And it sounds like I listened to his interview on Cult Chat, and it sounds like we're really on the same wavelength, you know, with how we see working with former members. So that was really encouraging. And we're going to co-facilitate a walking free recovery course, and we'll go through some of my stuff about, you know, different things about how assertive anger is a really helpful way of setting boundaries and all sorts, and look at briefly at trauma theory. So that's 2 days in Hamilton in Brisbane. Then I'm going to fly to New Zealand, and so I'll have kind of a rest period, because people who heard my itineraries like, oh, when are you going to have a rest? Well, I'm going to have a rest. And I'm going to see my sister Emma, who I know you've had some contact with. Then I'll come back to Christchurch, and I'm going to the Decult conference, and I believe I'm speaking on the Sunday morning first thing, like the keynote for the Sunday morning.
yeah, we can't wait for that.
That's so important and so exciting, not just for New Zealand. I think, you know, for that part of the world, for Australia, you know, that this needs, you know, to be happening in that part of the world. There seems to me that there's so much cult activity in these countries.
Yeah, that it's interesting, Gillie, because I think that you know, I think that people here, and maybe, you know, in New Zealand and that, you know, we're not too good at, we are pretty good at sort of being polite and not talking about things that are a bit awkward, actually, a bit like the British.
Really?
And I think that culty stuff's a bit like that. It's sort of seen as, oh, a wee bit, you know, like you know, just turn a blind eye to what wacky thing your neighbour might be doing, or that wacky group down the road's doing, like, just, yeah, let sleeping dogs lie kind of thing. You know, if it's not really, it's none of my business, not in my backyard, all that sort of mentality. You know, don't ask, don't tell. And I think that there's actually a lot more culty activity than people realize. And I know I often get people, you know, when they hear what I do, they say, oh, you know, what cults has New Zealand got? And of course it depends on your definition of cults, but I think that, you know, there's incredible awareness around Gloria Vale, but often people just think, oh, that's the only one, or that's the most extreme, or whatever. Or they tend to think of the word cult and they think of like Jim Jones, you know, like, yeah, multiple deaths and, you know, mass suicide and guns and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I say to people, well, it's not, you know, if you take away thinking about those kinds of things, if you more ask the questions of, has this group got really high levels of coercive control, really high levels of undue influence over a person's, you know, for Olive Leaf Network, we use a little wee image called the high demand hand to say, you know, does this group affect people's relationships and their resources and their employment and their education and their lifestyle? So we kind of, basically, it's a little model, a bit like the bite model, for saying, how totalitarian is it? You know, is the group, how much of a person's sphere in their life and their world is the group controlling? And actually there are many groups that, or I shouldn't say many, but there's more than people realize, and some of them are based in a form of Christianity, some of them are based in a new age type religion, some of them are based in well-being type philosophies. As you'd know, you know, it's all across the board, but New Zealand totally has got these groups that are you know, have got quite deep control of people's lives. I've been astonished. Olive Leaf Networks launched in March a year ago, and I've been astonished at the groups coming forward and contacting us. And quite often I'm Googling the name because I'm like, I've never heard of that. And then sure enough, you discover there's stuff about it, or there's been a news article 5 years ago on them, and they're super culty. And yeah, so all that to say, we do have culty stuff, and our people are at risk of being recruited into these groups and being harmed by them. So yeah, bring on greater awareness. Yeah, bring on Decult. It is exciting. Australasia's first cult awareness conference, and we are thrilled to have you coming to present at that.
Thank you. And I mean, my focus has been all the way through is on recovery, because these groups, and look, you just described the scene in the UK as well. I mean, people go, oh, are there cults in the UK? And you think, what? Yeah, there are. They think it's all in America, which is, I mean, it's a worldwide problem. It's in every country because it's human nature. There are certain personality types who want to control, and and there are others who are seeking and want to follow, who get hoodwinked, whatever. The whole thing is complex, dynamic. But then the challenge is, once you've established, yes, these things do exist, they cause unspeakable harm, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, or everything.
Yeah.
And then how do we get over it? And that's really what my thing is about. And I have got over and recovered from my experience. And so I know it's possible. That's not to say that I don't sometimes trigger. I trigger very, very much less than I used to, but I still have memories, and it's still there in my life and my body, but it works. I know for myself it's worked, and I've seen others walk free, and you kind of do the work with someone, the walking free model, as I'm calling it. And of course they go on in their life and other things happen, and it's never the end of the story, but it is a hopeful story.
Encouraging.
So long as people have access to the right stuff.
It really, really makes a world of difference.
It does.
It can definitely, like healing from anything, it can help you recover faster, instead of maybe taking decades. That might take months, or whatever it might be, to have the right resources at the right time. And I think walking free does is a right resource, and if it can be given to people at the right time, so tell us,
I hope so.
So tell us about after Decult. Then you're doing a couple of things. The Olive Leaf Network, we're very pleased
with you.
We're so excited to be facilitating and hosting you for 2 special events. And these events are aimed primarily at professional mental health therapists, but also other professionals who are in roles where they interface with either former members or current members of culty type groups. So that might be people in the legal professions, or people in social work, or police, or any sort of other role where they're
pastors.
Pastors, chaplains, spiritual directors, that sort of thing. People who are having direct contact with and supporting people who are either still in cults or who are in their own recovery journey. So we've got 2 events, 2 things on offer with you. And the first one is straight after Decult. And the reason why we did that is that we're just capturing you while you're there in Christchurch, because some people want to go to Decult and the 2-day course with you. So it's straight after it, on the Monday and Tuesday after Decult in October, 21st and the 22nd, I think. And that's going to be 2 days with you all day. It's not just that you're a speaker or whatever, it's Dr. Gillie. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you hope to bring in those 2 days?
What I'll do is kind of sort of raise the argument for actually knowing about this field if you're going to have contact with former cult members, whether you be a therapist, a pastor, whatever, police, whatever, but aiming mainly for sort of people who support former cult members, or family members will benefit from the information. So to really try and flesh out, what are we dealing with here? What is the damage done? What do people need? What's the effect on identity? A kind of, some of my thinking around identity and how that's affected the different generations, those who are recruited and some who joined, and those who are born and raised up to multi-generations. So just I'll look at kind of some of the Gestalt theory. So from a kind of Gestalt psychotherapy theory perspective, because it puts a very defined, what I've tried to do throughout all my thinking is to have a consistent kind of theoretical background, and therapists will understand that, like you do a particular therapy training. And there are particular ways of looking at identity depending on your studying. So I'd taken a Gestalt psychotherapy theory and tried to kind of be consistent throughout my thinking, but built on those theories and applied them to cults. And I just want to say that it's essential that people who deal with these people have some training and have some continuing professional development, which the 2 days is. And I often think, if someone with an eating disorder comes to me, I'm not a specialist in eating disorders. And actually, I need to be able to refer them to somebody who's done the training, who really understands. Mm-hmm. And I'm not referring them to someone who's had an eating disorder and therefore thinks that they can work with former people with eating disorders. And it's the same thing with this. It needs a specialist approach. Yeah. And often therapists will have a former member come into their room, and often I'm told this, the therapist then becomes almost voyeuristic. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. Suddenly they've moved from offering therapy to actually becoming kind of curious, but that person's there for therapy, but they don't know anything about it.
Yes.
So this is an opportunity.
Yeah, the client can end up taking on a role of having to educate the therapist.
Yes.
Either about the group, but also about their experiences. I know I've experienced that myself, and I distinctly can remember a couple of times coming out of there feeling resentful that I felt like I was just paying for upskilling and educating a therapist. So this is trying to turn that around a bit, and again, I'm sure those therapists, didn't mean to, and I guess they're trying to understand. But as you say, it is a specialist. Like, it is a very particular bunch of experiences, and increasingly there's so much research there to show and prove, like, this is a particular set, there's a particular dynamic that happens in these coercively controlling groups. It can be mapped, it can be measured. We can say this is the kind of effect it's going to have on people developmentally and their identity and all that stuff. This is what the recovery steps are going to look like. So there's no need for the client to have to educate the therapist anymore. There's things like Walking Free that can do that.
Yeah. And then this training, it's only 2 days, but the thing is, I'll give resources and people can find their way to other things. And then there's another side of it, which will come to the 5 days, which is that former members or those with lived experience of any sort can think that equips them to do the work.
Yes, right.
One time I referred someone who came to me to a former member who was a trained therapist from a particular group. I won't say which group. Yeah. And I thought, this would be an ideal match. This ex-member of this group could go to this counsellor from that group. But what happened is, talking about it to that counsellor triggered the counsellor off, and they spent the whole session telling the client about their cult experience.
Yeah.
And then I thought, actually, I needed to be trained, and I went to Wellspring and I did that, and I had my therapy, and not there, but I had therapy as well. And I think for those of us who are former members who become therapists, we need to process our own experience specifically. But if we're saying there are no therapists who got training in this, then where can we get that training? So the idea of the next workshop which we're doing, which is the 5 days in Hanmer Springs, is for therapists with lived experience to actually experience the walking free model for themselves as a client, as it were, but they're experiencing it from the inside. So they can then say, okay, well, I processed some of my experiences, and I've done it with others, so I've learned from them. I'm beginning to see actually other people have similar experiences, and it starts to help to move us away from being overwhelmed in our experience and counselling from that position, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then and a chance to process, get to know others, and in a small country like New Zealand to really hopefully set up, maybe even start a bit of a support network, others knowing your story. So that's the idea behind that. So I don't know.
Really, that's really helpful, Gillie. So the 5-day event, which is being offered in Hanmer Springs, will be 5 days with a small group. The 2-day event, we can, we've already got about 60 people registered, I think, so that will be larger group. And we've got more registrations coming in.
And there's still space for that
there's
too.
Still space. We've got room for several dozen more. So and actually we've got our early bird fee closes at the end of July. So you might be able to listeners might be able to get in with a registration for the early bird fee. But the 5-day one that you're offering is, it's going to be for a smaller group of participants. It's going to be an intensive. It will be more like 10 to 12 participants, the same people that you'll meet every day with for 5 days. And Dr. Ruth Garman from Australia and Dr. Gillie will be co-facilitating that. And as you're saying, it's going to be a deep dive into the walking free model and applying that for the therapist. So every therapist who comes to that will have been vetted by you to ensure assess. Sorry, I'll say that again. Every participant will have been assessed by you to ensure their suitability for the course. And it's that they are also former members. They're going to be people who have personal lived experience. And you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, that part of like a big focus of this 5-day intensive is going to be helping them like work through their own experiences in that context of then providing therapy about something very personal. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the first part of what I call my certificate in the walking free model, which I've delivered twice in the UK, 5 days intensive. So you experience the model yourself. And I think it's really important for all therapists to have their own therapy personally.
Absolutely.
And I lived that for myself. I had many years of therapy. And then if they want, this is a standalone 5 days. People can come, they can process their stuff, they can see my recovery workbook, which is a shortened version of Walking Free, which we'll use as a background textbook, as it were, for more information for each person. But then they can go on and do the other modules of the certificate, which is teaching how to use the model, because I tend to work differently than normal therapy with the walking free model. So when we're offering psychoeducation, I often work fortnightly for about an hour and a half or 2 hours rather than an hour or 50 minutes. So it needs more time when you're doing the psychoeducation and going through an actual workbook. So it's a psychoeducational model.
Wow.
And I'm just going to say briefly about the phases of recovery, because this is based on what came out of my PhD research. And it could probably be expanded or developed or whatever, but where I got to was that there are 4 phases of recovery. The first phase is the need to leave the abusive situation. It's very difficult to recover when you're still in that controlling environment. But for second and multi-generation, that's complex because there's still family links, there's still, but to leave as much as possible. And then phase 2 is the focus is on understanding psychologically and cognitively what happened. That's the focus. And Walking Free, the book, and this workshop is working in phase 2. Phase 3 is then what normal therapy would usually address, which is the emotional healing side of things, the focus. That's not to say emotional healing isn't happening in phase 2 when you're doing the psychoeducation, but that isn't the focus. So in phase 3, the focus is the healing the post-traumatic stress, or what hasn't been healed in phase 2, and grief and loss, and really focusing on that, processing it, learning what are emotions, how do I deal with emotions, where do they sit? And there's a chapter on emotions in Walking Free. And then phase 4 is actually recognizing, do you know, I think I'm recovered enough. You know, maybe I'll need to go back and do some work sometimes, but actually I can get on with my life, and I can live a life, and I can see if maybe I benefited or I grew through any aspects of what happened. So that's where my thinking is, and that's the structure in my head, if that's clear to you, I don't know, of kind of where do we do the work. And unfortunately, therapists will usually go to phase 3. How do you feel about this? Dissociation, panic. I don't feel, I'm not allowed to feel. I got punished for feeling in my cult.
Yeah.
So for someone to go, how do you feel? It's like, whoa, this is a trap, you know.
Not ready.
Not ready. So actually the psychoeducation helps you to understand the dynamics, not your dynamics, the dynamics of the cult, and the processes then that happen for you within that.
And understanding the environment that actually caused the sort of the symptoms that you're seeing. Yeah. So all of that you're saying, that's in Walking Free in your workbook, and that kind of thing will be deeply addressed in the 5-day intensive course. Yeah. Oh, that's super exciting. And there's I'll make sure that the links are in the show notes for anybody. And even if you're not a therapist yourself, but maybe you want to recommend this to your therapist, if you're a former cult member and you think your therapist needs upskilling, you know, pass it on to them. Do share this around. It's a really unique opportunity for New Zealanders. Dr. Gillie's not, you know, we're not promising to bring her back next year or anything like that at this stage. So it's definitely an opportunity to grab now while it's in front of you.
Yeah.
So you know, that was one of my key questions, I think, but I think you've addressed it already really very well, Gillie, around, you know, why do mental health therapists, just focusing on them, there would be other professionals as well who benefit from this, but in particular, mental health therapists, why do they need specialist training? And yeah, I think you gave a really good summary there around just, going, hey, there are very particular dynamics and very particular kind of effects that happen on former members, and so this is why this kind of thing is really important. And thank you for talking with us more about what the Walking Free model is as well. I've got
There's one other thing, is the Gloria Vale Timaru visit. I don't want to miss saying that.
You're also, another thing in your New Zealand trip is that you are going to be visiting down Timaru, and the Gloria Vale Leavers Support Trust will be bringing you down there and giving some further opportunities for former members and for those who wish to upskill there. So look out on the Gloria Vale Leavers Support Trust social media or website for more information on that if you are further down south. Yeah, thanks for that, Gillie. Now, I hear that more congratulations are in order for you, that you have also, just like Liz and Carolyn Ansley, normally my co-hosts on Cult Chat, they have just been in Barcelona in Spain at the ICSA conference, International Cultic Studies Association. And you've been hanging around this conference, or visiting, I should say, and presenting or connected with it for a number of years now. But I hear that congratulations are in order, that you just won a really special award, Diane Cassoni Award, at this last ICSA conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Yeah, well, that's a thrill. Honestly, to write a book and then have someone read it, well, a board of people read it and say, actually, this deserves an award in the popular category. So although it's based on my research and my clinical work and my own experience, it is a self-help book. So it's in the popular category. Diane Cassoni was an amazing woman. She was a forensic psychologist, and she died at the age of 63, I gather, of pneumonia or something, which is a real tragedy. She was a brilliant academic. She had a real heart, and a heart for this sort of field of radicalization and cults and that sort of thing.
She was a professor of criminology, wasn't she?
That's correct, yes. And yeah, she was prestigious and lovely and really beautiful. When you saw her at the conferences, you know, she was always very smart and really had a heart. And so to win, and she was my external examiner for my PhD Viva. She meant the world to me, and she gave me such wonderful feedback on my PhD, and, you know, just said that like the clinical work that people have done over the years through ICSA, and which has been expressed through ICSA, actually I'd filled a gap of doing the empirical research to back it up. So that was, you know, heartwarming, really, that she saw that I was filling a gap, which is what PhDs are for, really, and the phases that I've just described. So yeah, honestly, I knew before that I was getting it, and I wasn't allowed to tell anybody. And I took my posh frock, and I dressed all up for it. My colleagues, who also very brilliant researchers in Spain, I noticed they didn't dress up as much as I did, but I haven't had that many awards in my life, so it's coming to me now after lots of hard work. So yeah, it was fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, that's really, really special. And yeah, so that was for the book. That's what you're saying, you know.
That's the Walking Free.
Yeah, for the book, not just, you know, your wider work as well. It was specifically for Walking Free, which in a way, it's a summary, isn't it? It's a magnum opus of all your work and your experience over the years. So yeah, oh, that's really.
Last year, ICSA gave me an award for the Herbert L. Rosedale Award for kind of my years in the field. So the last 2 years, I got 2 awards.
Oh, that's really special. Yeah.
Which it is special, yeah, about kind of, you know, contributing to people's freedom. But yeah, I'm very, very touched and moved. And yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's super cool. And it's really important to pause and celebrate, and, you know, going with that theme of a metaphor, to look back and see just how far you've come, and to sit down and look back and celebrate that. So yeah, huge congratulations. Our time is nearly at an end, but hey, you've just been at ICSA. Was there anything that, you know, really stood out to you this time, apart from winning an award?
Oh yeah, so many brilliant talks. So I, with 2 colleagues, facilitated a clinical roundtable where therapists came together and discussed cases, and that was great. And then I gave 2 talks. So it was very busy, but I also managed to attend a lot of talks. I went to Liz and Caroline's talks with Anka and Maria Esquera, talking about the experiences in the Children of God. Was really very heartbreaking and heartwarming, and incredible research they've done. And saying to them, really, these researches need to be published. People need to hear about them. And yeah, I mean, so many. I mean, I could talk for a whole cult chat on some of the stuff. Yeah, an exit counselling which was done went into in detail, was just the most fascinating thing, from France, the French team.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a wonderful place to go. There's some controversial elements because it's an open conference, but I pick and choose who I want to hear, and it was brilliant.
Oh, that's amazing. And many of their talks, they do make many of them available online, videos or audio recordings. So if anybody's interested, have a wee Google of them and look those up and listen. And yeah, I agree. That's what Liz and Carolyn said as well, that they came away super inspired, feeling really, educated and informed, and yeah, really, really inspired by all the amazing people around the world who are working to help bring better awareness and education and better support and recovery for former members. So yeah, that's amazing.
In Montreal next year.
Oh, is it? Oh, another beautiful place. Oh, maybe I'll have to start saving my pennies and get myself to that one. Yeah. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our chat today. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared, and all the best with packing your bags and getting everything organised for coming down under. We can't wait to see you at Decult and at Olive Leaf Network's events and down in Timaru. And also, we just hope you have a fantastic time exploring the beautiful South Island as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindy. It's a privilege.
Okay, well, as we say here in New Zealand, ka kite anō, see you next time. And maybe next time it will be in person.
I think so.
Ka kite. See you later.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
If anything in today's episode was difficult or upsetting for you and you would like to talk to somebody, we encourage our New Zealand listeners to free call or text 1737 for support from a trained counsellor. Or you might like to visit the resources section of the Olive Leaf Network website, where you can find a range of organisations and resources that might be able to support you. We would also like to remind you that the views and thoughts and opinions that have been expressed in this program are the speakers alone, and Cult Chat does not necessarily endorse or share them.